last 2 years. We've slowed down a little bit on that production. Part of that is New Jersey state laws, which I could get into more detail if you want, but basically there's a lot of restrictions on moving food scraps, which are considered waste, from site to site. Now, you can do composting on site with stuff that you generate, self-generated, but in order to move the materials you need for compost to another site, there's an expensive permitting process. There's a lot of safety checks. New Jersey is a very strong. We're actually working on a little bit of advocacy right now. If you're interested in this, you can get in touch with us because we're working to advocate with the state to slightly loosen up those regulations for things like urban farming. We need the ability to grow that dirt, which means we need the ability to move people's kitchen waste, and smaller amounts of food scraps and things like that from residents and stores into our urban farms so we can compost it there safely.
Which is a win-win because I mean, and I think that I grant that I think you also are well aware of the fact that these legislations are in place to make sure that you don't have massive piles of not properly composted, biodegrading food scraps which are making smells and issues and rats. But you have 2 schools here, which are inadvertently polluting and causing massive amounts of methane pollution because of all their food scraps they pollute and go into the landfill. So that's a win-win-win. You get raw material for compost, you build, you grow dirt, they reduce their garbage and hauling costs, and the state of New Jersey loosens the regulations because they realize where the future is going.
So let's make this happen. Let's work together. We need a little bit of legislation passed. Even if it's something like the compost laws stay the same, but we have a small permitting process for very small urban farms to accept very small levels of food waste, even that would help.
And so who specifically can our viewers reach out to, and what specifically should they be researching themselves in order to help collaborate with you and join forces on this?
Well, you could do a little, Rutgers has a lot of information on this. Rutgers has the, I'm going to get the name wrong, but we went to a statewide compost regulator training.
Oh, that was in Duke Farms.
There's one in Duke Farms every year.
Yes.
So that's where we learned a lot about these issues and also how to maintain our compost piles more safely. You can do a little bit of, just like any legal issue, you can do a little bit of talking to your state representatives at the state level. Okay, so your local House members or what have you, or even talk to your mayors because they might be able to connect people in the county level and then the state level. I'm trying to think of the exact right agency to point people to.
No, that's it right there. It is the mayors or local elected officials, and then bam, contact Emilio Swagger.
Because cities, so one thing we've heard is that cities, municipalities, as you know, very strong in New Jersey, they also need to be on board with this. So it would help a lot if you're worried about composting in your community, in your urban farms. Go to your mayor first, go to your local council and say, look, let's understand these regulations. That's step 1. Let's try to understand what's out there. Step 2 is get the council or the local municipality to maybe look at an ordinance that says we would approve XYZ method of local composting, because then you could take that to the higher level, the state or the county level, and say, look, I know the regulations are as such, but our community already wants to pass this. We have the city bought into it.
Love it. It's the states saying, hey, we want to control X, Y, and Z, and going to the federal government to have that freedom. But it's at obviously a local level. Love it.
So starting your, just like anything you want to do, starting community, and we're going to be working on that issue, hopefully getting hopefully eventually getting some kind of special permission to compost on urban farms here in New York. But as it is now, we're just doing our own compost material, our dead plants here, for the most part, and the wood chips that we can bring in. But we would like to help the schools and take their food with. What we are doing is consulting with the 2 local schools to see if they can do compost solutions on site for themselves. So we did get a couple of tumblers going.
Smart.
So we're going to have starting next year, the end of this year, so the fall of 2017, Team Charter will be the first school here with their compost tumblers going, reducing their food waste. But again, that's only it's an on-site solution for them.
All right.
But that's a step in the right direction.
That's a step.
Yeah.
A step.
So.
All right. So what else do we have? What else are we looking at here, Emilio?
We got our, when we're heavy into composting, we got our DIY sifter.
Nice. Do-it-yourself sifter. Look at this.
Started out. Let's see if we can give this a quick spin. All right. So you can imagine pouring compost in here on this end.
Right.
Okay. So we're pouring it in here. Slow turns. We've got a couple different size mesh screens on there, but really it's the 1/4 inch one that does all the work.
Okay.
And started out making this to sift exclusively vermicast, worm compost. Now I kind of use it for all of our compost because I think it just gets the big chunks out pretty well. And put a couple tarps down, and it just kind of scatters it. It's kind of nice.
And this is STEM education.
Yeah.
You know, science, tech, engineering, and math. This is tinkering. This is engineering. This is what the prototype looks like before you have something that is, you know, finely tuned and polished. And I commend you doing that, because the kids must see, oh, you know, something doesn't have to look fancy and beautiful. Although I do think this looks pretty awesome in a good way. So this is I've never seen one of these on a plot before. So
yeah, it's funny.
You know.
It's funny. I had it in my basement for a while.
Okay.
There was a whole worm composting thing going on in my basement, but now it's here, and we've used it a few times. And then you know, we have our, you know, this is urban farming, man. We got this small hoop house donated to us from another urban farm that had to move off a parking lot.
Look at that.
Actually, Garden State Urban Farms, we love them. Hi Lorraine, hi Bill.
Garden State Urban Farms.
Garden State Urban Farms, which
Lorraine
is great.
Gibbons,
Yep.
Bill.
Yep, Bill Burgermaster.
Bill
Bill's
Burgermaster.
Greenhouses. So we put this thing together finally, and you know, it's been a couple years now. I haven't even. Yeah, we do this low budget.
No, but this is it. This is you're making it happen.
It works, and we seeded some new stuff here this year. We do cut the sides and roll them up for the summer.
Yeah.
We do have a huge vermiculture pit
Oh,
here.
I didn't see this.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were holding out on me. I don't know. Every time I interview you, you have all these, like last time was solar panels, this time subterranean.
We've got thousands of worms in here composting.
Oh, wow. And red wiggler worms, earthworms?
Yeah,
What do you
red
call it?
wigglers.
Red wigglers. Look at that. So this is going to be
So let's see.
compost
Let me get
all
in here.
year long,
Let
right?
me just do it the right way here.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, vermiculture, and it is worms that break down food scraps, cardboard, and so forth. These little red wigglers, they don't get much bigger than that, but they do reproduce quickly. And they will leave behind these this black, soft, loamy worm castings.
Black, soft, loamy worm castings.
Yeah, they're softer than regular soil if you want to touch that.
Wow, that is soft.
Okay. But
This is just like the ideal nutrients for plants, right?
It's super loaded nutrients.
Super loaded.
A lot of nitrogen, a lot of potassium, and also microbes, right? Because the worms themselves, and this whole thing is an ecosystem, so you're getting lots of good bacteria into your soil. This is like the opposite of like the sandy, clayey soil that you see around. So we love mixing this in, and
That's great.
can, you know, people do all kinds of things like making their compost tea with it and then spreading it as a tea. You know, we just add it to the berms, and I just add even piles of the worms right into the outdoor compost and let them eat it up. You know, and it's just it's, you know, obviously it's a great educational tool, but it can process a lot and it can give us a lot of extra fertilizer.
Yeah, when we met with Will Allen when he came up and did the Duke Farms thing, and also when he did a presentation in Newark, he was saying how transformative it is for a child to hold worms in their hand, like a whole heaping load of them. And I just always think about when I see them, like these worms, like you said, they you know, the input is the decaying fruit or vegetable or whatever, you know, organic matter, and the output is 100 or more times more beneficial with beneficial bacteria. Right, and that's the microbiome that we have, that all animals have, and I just think that's we could talk forever about that, but that is awesome.
We make
subterranean worm farm,
and we make sure that kids see it every time they come for one of their Richmond visits, because A, they just like holding worms, and B, it is an interesting experience, right? To have like a living ecosystem in your hand that's part of like nature's recycling process. It's just a weird thing to think about, and I hope that it gets some people thinking about just all the waste they make in general. Like that's one great thing about composting. As soon as you start composting, you're like, well, wait a minute, like, why am I buying so many plastic containers? Why aren't I just, you know, why am I just not filling reusable bags and only using cardboard that I can recycle or compost again? Like, it really makes you like real conscious of this whole system, this waste system that we don't really think about.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's what you just said is perfect.
All right. Well, I don't know about perfect, but it's all right.
No,
all
but
right.
I mean, but to your point, I mean, there's no such thing as a way. You know, everything we need to talk about fair trade coffee, right? You want to buy coffee from farmers that have a living wage. You talk about the waste problem that we don't acknowledge unless you're living next to a landfill. So by communicating that is powerful, because, you know, Einstein had, like last time we spoke, had some sort of quote that if you become a vegetarian, it's one of the best ways to help the world because of the methane that's produced in you know, all of our animal husbandry practices. You know, not even to talk about, you know, the animal cruelty that exists there. So I just think that, you know, law of conservation of matter. Matter and energy are neither created or destroyed, they just change form. So I think of it that. That's a scientific principle, and it goes back to composting, it goes back to how we live our lives, what kind of cars we drive, and worms.
Yeah.
Worms. They recycle everything.
Yeah, well, I've had some very, very fortunate, very smart people in my life that have convinced me to go vegetarian as well.
And how long have you been vegetarian?
About a year and a half now.
Wow.
Yep, had a little encouragement from a friend of mine.
Okay.
She knows who she is.
All right.
And
biggest challenges, biggest successes for someone wants to do it.
The great thing about it is I talk to people about it like I never checking out this wreck here.
I can't not do this. This is a solar panel photovoltaic that obviously has fallen. You see how thin it is. And actually, you see the silicon, the glass covering it.
Like PSE&G's property here.
All right. So this unfortunately fell, but this is an example of alternative energy that the big boys, PSE&G, Public Service, Electric and Gas, are doing. They're putting them up on all of their telephone poles because they know how cheap and how efficient they are to make clean green energy, and so it reduces their cost while helping out the consumers. So if you're thinking about solar, go solar. All right, back to worms and vegetarian.
Well, anyway, no, just talking about vegetarianism, like, and then I think it was reinforced for me recently when I saw Before the Flood, that Leo DiCaprio documentary.
Yeah, great documentary. Before the Flood, watch it. Leonardo DiCaprio.
I thought it was good. It had a good mix of cynicism as well as a real good journalistic approach. Really, kind of like, what is the problem here? Show me the problem. Mm-hmm. And but anyway, the whole meat thing. Look, I actually really love meat. I still think it tastes and smells great. Yeah. But avoiding it, even just like reducing it, and certainly reducing beef, which is like cows being the biggest land consumer and polluter out of all the I guess animals that we domesticate for eating. Mm-hmm. Even just cutting it down quite a bit really is one of the biggest environmental things you could do. Like, and potentially even better than like driving your car less, because the emissions from farms and the pollution from industrial agriculture is that immense that it can actually have more of an impact to reduce that than how you doing than to deal with other technologies and other things like that.
So that's pretty profound. I mean,
it is. I thought that was crazy.
Eating meat can pollute less than like riding your bike to work.
Yeah, I mean, it's subsets. I mean, obviously you have to do your own measurement of what you're actually doing. But like, if we got rid of some of these huge meat producing farms that are terrible polluters,
right? Like, and treating their animals with sub I guess I don't know how to say. Just really sort of deplorable conditions, many of them.
Well, that's a whole that's a whole next level of it.
And everybody, for the viewers out there, tune in on July 4th because I'll be interviewing Danielle, who is one of the wonderful workers at the Catskill Animal Sanctuary, and she's going to completely vibe and agree with what you just said.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's great.
So anyway, it's something to think about. We love our meat. Americans love it. A lot of our diets kind of depend on it. If you don't really, especially if you don't really cook and you don't really know how to get protein from other sources, but I mean, do a little research if you're interested, because you can get protein from other sources. You can get what you need from other sources. And, I'm still alive a year later or whatever.
So where do you get your protein?
A lot of beans and peas and soy and things like that. Okay. So, and nuts, eggs. I still eat. I'm not vegan, so I still do eat some animal products. Okay. But I just don't eat animal. I just really try to cut down on the animal flesh part of things.
Good for you. Good for you. That's great.
Yeah, and I'm not it's not to be preachy, man. This is just like things you learn from your experience. Especially being around vegetables all the time. I'm like, well, why don't I just eat more of these?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's a big money maker in America, and I'm all about capitalism. The more the merrier. But I do. And I've seen plenty of articles and YouTubes and just information out there on people that are like MMA fighters and they're completely vegetarian or vegan. Like they have enough protein, it can be done. Yeah. And I think that's also a shift in consciousness. Like American identity is ride the cowboy. You're an independent with your cowboy hat and have a hamburger. Right? Yeah. It's almost like built into our psyche, meat eating. And I think because a lot of it has to do with the livelihood of a lot of our great fellow citizens. So.
Look, if you get exposure to how these things are produced, you start with like the food documentaries that are out there that show this stuff. But go visit some farms and see if you really feel the same way about your food when you see where it comes from.
Right, and if you learn how intelligent a cow is or how intelligent a pig is. Yeah.
Wonderful. So over here, Alex, this is the original site of Swag Project here. So we got these 4 colorful beds.
It's where it all began.
That were begun that were begun with the, this was the collaboration between Team Charter and Peshine. It was like, let's get the public school kids and the charter school kids to understand that they're all just kids in the same neighborhood.
Right.
Let's work together on this. Thank you, First Tabernacle, once again, for basically being the genesis, the host of all this. So my organization, Planting Seeds of Hope, we put a little grant money together. We had a couple of great community building events with these. These have now become, as we've grown over the years, this has become our educational boxes. This year, this spring, students weren't as involved in this side as they normally are, but typically their classes, even all of last year, their classes actually adopted these boxes.
Wow.
Came out on their own with their teachers, and kind of grew what they wanted. You know, I gave them some supervision, but they grew what they wanted. This year we're doing our cucumbers in here. They're going to be climbing up these nets. We have a bunch of different greens and eggplants that go back in here.
Okay.
So these beds are now 8 years old and they're holding up. We did these longer ones just a year or two later, so they're also getting pretty old.
Okay.
Again, just more, you know, right now we're pretty maxed out. We have like all of our stuff planted, and we're just waiting for a little bit of growth. It's obviously getting a little late in the season, but we have harvested a couple rounds of things and put new stuff in. So we're rotating crops now.
Oh wow! So that's important to note. This is like the first. This is not the first rotation. This is the second or third rotation.
Yeah, not for every part of it, but we have taken we harvested all our arugula and lettuce like the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We pulled a lot of garlic that had been planted for 8 months now.
Okay.
And what else? We've been pulling herbs as well. That the herbs shot up on their own again, like right after the winter. So
wonderful.
If you just kind of pan back here, you'll see that we have taken the whole backyard of the church and the old rectory house that they have here and made it into just an in-ground farm. And again, even though we're planting in the soil here, we have added layers and layers of compost and wood chips over the years.
Right.
And we get soil tests. Okay, so
great,
we do tests for heavy metals. Yes, all of the Newark farms that are in our urban ag network have access to the USDA and Rutgers to help with soil tests. They do a comprehensive job. It's great, and they're just looking for the big problems. Lead and arsenic and heavy metals that are an issue. This has been great. This has been giving us a lot of extra space. So we're doing a cornfield, peanuts, okra. We've put a few more fruit trees in the back this year. There's some dwarf peaches and
great.
some apples that are just new, just transplanted. And this just dense foliage over here is actually a few berms of herbs.
I think that's what I smell.
You're going to smell that, and it attracts pollinators, and we just are constantly clipping from there, making teas and dried herbs and stuff.
Wonderful.
So
and what do we have back here, Emilio?
Oh yeah, this is the